So Helen, what was Manning and Carrawarra, like back in the early 80s?
They were both what you might call Holmes West suburbs. Carrawarra was almost completely, the houses in Carrawarra and the flats and all the buildings really were pretty well all owned by the state. I think it was probably called the State Housing Commission then, before it became Holmes West.
Yeah.
And Manning was much the same. That had started off as a Holmes West suburb. It was beginning to change a bit, but basically, so there was still a lot of people living there who were on benefits and in need of some help.
There's a story I've heard about a nurse, Judy Powell, saying that there was a great need because there were a lot of single mothers in the area.
Right. That's right. Because they had at least 2 blocks of flats in Carrawarra, and a lot of the people in those flats tended to be single mums.
Yeah. So how did Southcare get started?
Well, they had Lady Gowrie were operating out of Carrawarra, and they established these contact lunches. I think it was Lady Gowrie that started them off.
Yeah.
And I belonged to the Manning, was it the Uniting Church? Yes, it would have been the Uniting Church. And Wes Hartley was the minister there, and he took a great interest in these contact lunches and went to all of them. And they really, part of their reason for being was the ministers of the churches in the area were all getting a lot more calls for assistance. People tended to go to the churches or to the ministers if they were in need, and out of that it was felt that there was room for somewhere for them to go.
So there was a constant emerging need.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was really the start of it. And a lot of the people that attended those contact lunches were part of the first group that set Southcare up.
Okay. So Helen, how did you first become involved with Southcare?
Well, through the church.
Okay, so the Uniting
Church
that you
in Manning, and several other churches in the district also were interested in establishing a group. And we set up training courses for volunteers.
Oh wow, really?
Yes, we had a big training course. Well, we used to go. I think the first one they did was they were held in the evenings, the classes. And I can't remember just how many there were, but quite a lot of evenings we spent. And they had people from Holmes West, from Social Security, from all the government agencies would come and give their ideas about what was needed.
Oh, okay.
And we had some trainings how to deal with clients and how you treated them, and we were quite well trained, in fact.
So how did that emerge? So is this when Southcare had already started, or?
This was getting Southcare ready to start.
Okay, so this is all the pre-work to Southcare.
We've done all the training before.
Oh wow.
Started it.
Okay, so and how did you get the volunteers?
Again, through the churches, and that's where most of them came from.
Okay.
At that time, that we had an empty church building, which is the one that's the church there now. That was the first, and so we were able to have the use of that without any cost. which was good.
Which was good.
And so we started off not opening every day, just probably 2 or 3 days a week. We were there and just waited for people to come. Didn't do a lot of advertising or anything, or just the word spread.
So you got all these volunteers, you trained them, and then how did Southcare get set up? Were you involved in the constitution of it, or?
Oh yes, the constitution. Now, there was another group operating out of, yes, I can't think of the name now. And they'd already been through all this. They were operating, in a slightly different area, but we used their constitution.
Oh yeah, the good old say that.
Yes, just changed what needed to be changed. And basically that constitution's still pretty much the same, except that last big change.
Yeah, that you and I were involved with in 2014.
Yes.
We started that process,
Yes,
didn't we?
but that, we were still, the basis of what we were working on was still in our constitution,
Yeah.
but that's changed considerably now,
Yeah,
as it needed to.
as it needed to. So you got the constitution. Southcare was opened on the 6th of April,
Yeah,
1982.
1982.
So what was your role when Southcare started, Helen?
Well, we set up a committee to sort of run things, and I was the secretary of that committee in 1982. And yes, that was where we were like the governing body, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was, we were fairly well represented again from the churches.
So who made up this board?
Well, I think we probably had somebody from each of the churches that were involved, and that was the idea, that the churches sent a representative. So the Manning Church was, I don't know who was this representative. We had, because I was the secretary. Yes, can't remember. Audrey was the sort of coordinator of the rosters and all, a lot of that sort of work. But a lot of it just sort of gradually happened, as it does.
Things do.
And first of all, we relied on donations, food donations, to help people with who were in need of some food, and we didn't like much doing it that way. And as soon as we could, we moved to having a small shop.
Oh, okay.
Which that started up probably within 12 months of us starting up. Certainly, we wanted people to be able to choose what they wanted, and we still relied on donations a lot, but we actually started to buy in some products, and it still worked the same way. People got vouchers to spend in the shop,
Right.
but it just gave them some, it meant they could make their own decisions.
Yeah, some choice. Yeah.
So yes, that was,
So,
and the op shop had started before that.
okay.
That was very early on in the piece, the op shop.
We love an op shop.
I love an op shop. The building that is there now was there was a lot of different parts of that which got changed over the years. So there was room to have one room for the op shop, and the big hall had a dividing screen, so we could put that across, and the back half was the shop, the food shop.
Right.
And the front half was where we interviewed clients and did all that sort of work.
So was the main work in the beginning providing emergency relief?
Yes, yes.
Is that what
was,
you called it?
That was the mainstay of the place, really. That was what we were there for.
Yeah. Okay.
And other things happened along the way. But the baby blankets and the layettes were all part of those early days. That was very much part of the early setup.
And what was that? Did people knit and sew, how did that emerge?
Yes, again, donations of baby clothes, and I think we bought miles of flannelette, and some of our good sewers cut them up and made nappies.
Oh wow, really?
And so each, I can't remember what each layette had in it now, but there was a dozen nappies and little singlets and, a few items of clothing, a starting
A starting kit for these mothers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, we relied on the churches, the people in the churches for donations. They always came in.
Yeah.
You know.
And did you mainly get donations from people from the church, or did other people donate?
Well, gradually other people donated, especially for the op shop when you know, people would donate grannies or grannies' clothes or whatever, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
all those sort of things.
Yeah.
But it was always good. We liked getting kids' uniforms and things like that for the local schools. So if you got them donated, that was always good.
Yeah, that would have been a big bone, a big support. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because even today, there's that huge need at the beginning of the school year for people who are on, you know, welfare payments or low income to get some support when the kids go back to school. And you know, we still do the back to school packs now, you know, in 2018. So
that's been
you know,
a long time.
It's a long time, yeah. So what attracted you to Southcare?
Oh, well, I could see, it was easy to see the need.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to be part of something that might help that.
Might address that need.
Yeah.
And I mean, you certainly, in terms of commitment, you know, it's outstanding, your contribution. You sat on the board for something like 32 years.
Something wrong with that woman.
And I'm just wondering, in that 32 years, what's something that really sticks in your mind around? I mean, you know, 32 years is a long time, so it's a big question, but half a lifetime. But I'm just wondering if there's a point that, you know, really resonates with you.
I suppose when the government finally decided it would fund us for the aged care work, some of the volunteers in the fairly early days decided that there was a lot of elderly people in the area who didn't have a lot of contact with others, and so they started up the daycare.
Oh yeah, the social centre.
And this was all volunteers. You know, they'd cook the lunch at home and bring it. You could never do all these things now.
That's amazing.
Brought the cakes for morning tea, and Margaret Maley always made a birthday cake. Anybody had a birthday. And I always remember when we had the opening day, it was, they called it Southcare, what was it? Care for the aged or something, and there was a bit of discussion about that. The aged and infirm. We weren't all aged and we weren't all infirm, you know. It was quite funny at the time. And so they changed the name around a bit so that it suited everybody. But that was that started the daycare, which was our first venture into aged care.
Right. So you finally got government funding.
We finally got government funding for that, which was, you know, a big leap forward. We could actually employ some people to do the work. Previously it had been run by volunteers.
So up until that time, everybody was a volunteer, and then you got some government funding.
Yeah.
And do you remember who you employed?
Yes. How would I forget? Malachi Nugent was the first coordinator. He was an Irishman.
Right.
He's a lovely man, and he set up that area. You know, when it was, they had. I'm trying to think how many paid staff there were. 2 or 3 others that were paid.
I mean, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That for you, it's always been a team.
Yeah.
It's always been about the team.
Oh yes, not individuals.
Not individuals, and
Not this individual.
not this individual who sat on the board for 32 years and would have seen a lot of comings and goings.
You're not wrong.
But the sense that the board works together
Yes.
to, you know, for the betterment of the organisation.
Yes. yes, that's it. Is all this being recorded?
Yeah, but we can take things out.
I was just going to talk a bit about the board, but I don't particularly want it to be as part of the document.
Yeah, we won't.
Because initially the board was made up of representatives from the churches, so we had no, as you know, we didn't have any control over who was on the board. And gradually over the years that changed when we brought in people for specific roles like treasurer and things like that. And so that all happened gradually, and for a long time it was the original arrangement of the volunteers and representatives from the local churches.
Yeah, well, I think when you and I sat down and started that process of reviewing the Constitution in 2014, I know it had been done in 2006.
Oh yes, there'd been a few goes at it.
A few changes, hadn't there? But I know one of the things that sticks in my memory with what you and I were doing with the Constitution was to try and change that so that there was a representative board. Excuse me, so that the board could start to make some decisions about who they brought on.
Yes, yes.
And I remember you and I having many debates with the board about that.
About how it could best be achieved.
Yeah, without losing the spirit of the people who had volunteered and stepped up.
Yes, that's right, and have stepped forward. See, Sue Doherty, she came as a church volunteer.
That's right. Yeah.
Lindsay's still, I think he's still.
Lindsay is still on our board, Lindsay Yeomans, and yeah, he was a church and is a church representative.
Yes, yes.
And you know, we've still got Julie Ham, still Optimus representative. That's right. The Rotary Club.
Yes, the Rotary Club's good.
Yeah, and they still are. You know, they still
support.
Provide great support for us.
Yeah.
So I do think it's interesting around having that balance of, you know, in our Constitution it talks about, you know, the members will be drawn from church and service groups. That's what it originally said.
Yeah.
And now it still holds that, but it says that, you know, you can appoint independent directors. So we get that. I think we get the best of both worlds there.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. So
I still laugh when I think of the Constitution, and I realised the morning of the meeting that we hadn't put in the Constitution how we were going to elect
members. You and I had a lot of fun doing that Constitution.
I couldn't believe it. I read it and I read it again.
Oh yeah, and I'm reminded of one of the great strengths that you brought to the board is that you knew that Constitution like the back of your hand, and how we'd always look to you and say, "So Helen, what does it say in the Constitution?" And you could just rattle it off. You know, I think that was one of the, you know.
Read that Constitution many times.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really interested in about how many annual general meetings you did, because you would have done 32.
Yep.
And I'm curious around how they were like in the old days compared to how they are, you know, when you and I were working together.
Not a lot of difference. Not a lot different. We used to have lunches.
Oh, nice.
Have lunch, and Raymond Cheek was the chaplain at the time. That's a whole other story.
For another day.
Yeah, and he always thought we should have 2 annual general meetings a year because there would be 2 lunches. These important things stay in your mind, you know.
And I remember you telling me a story about how it was all self-catering back in the old days.
Oh yes, too right. You know, ring everybody up and say, "Now, what can you bring?" And oh yes, well I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll make a cake. And we fed them all.
Yeah, so there was
we didn't have any money, and so the first year the board said we could actually spend some money and get it catered. Oh, but we died and gone to heaven. But it was lovely. And that's not all that many years ago that happened.
Yeah, can you remember when? Because I think Vicky's told me a story that you and her used to make sandwiches.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And we had a good little patisserie near where I lived. And one stage there I didn't have a car, so Vicky used to come over and get me. And we'd always order the sausage rolls and the party pies and whatever from this little patisserie. Gather all this food up. And we always managed to feed. And then we made it, because we did change it to afternoon tea. We decided it was getting a bit much. It's lunch. Standards get set a bit high, you know.
Yeah,
So catered afternoon tea was, that was really good.
And even now, our AGMs do attract, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And what do you think has been that attraction?
Well, I think it's always been part of the community, and having representatives from church and service groups and what have you, you get heard out in the community, and so people come representing their organisations, and perhaps other people come because they hear about it, and a lot of the volunteers would come to the AGM.
Yes, and they still do.
Yeah, but always the volunteers that come to the AGM.
The volunteers are a really important foundation of Southcare, aren't they? I mean, they started Southcare.
Yeah, exactly.
And even today, 2018, we've got over 130 volunteers.
Yeah.
We've got a lot more volunteers than staff.
Yes.
We've got about 75 paid staff. And, you volunteered for 32 years. What did it give back to you in terms of volunteering?
Well, met some great people.
Of course.
And among the clients you meet some great people. And it always felt like a worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, so you felt good after you'd done it?
Yeah, right. I thought you're making a contribution to the community.
Did you find that Southcare made it easy for people to volunteer?
I believe so, because one thing, there was a big range of things they could do as a volunteer. And the transport used to be one of our biggest users of volunteers. That was a great, that was really good. And the op shop and the foods shop, the Mankara.
Yeah.
They have thought of, when we were looking for a name for Southcare before it had a name, that was something like that was suggested, and make up of the two, but we didn't like it much. And I don't know how we came up with Southcare.
So Helen, how has you've been on the board for 32 years, how have you seen the area change in that period of time?
Probably changed in the sort of people who live in the area, and the fact that state housing don't have such a big stake anywhere now that they had then, and Karawara in particular, they seem to have totally changed that area, demolished the flats, blocks of flats that were there.
Oh, yes.
And I think to buy land there now is quite expensive. And Manning has just continued to change, and there's more housing in Manning because the big blocks have been subdivided and houses built at the back and all that.
Yes.
And they're both very desirable suburbs because they're close to the city. So, but there's still people who are in need.
Absolutely.
And while it may look as though it's changed, at the base it's still the same.
Yeah.
For some people.
For some people, yeah.
One client sticks in my mind. I don't know why particularly, but he was such a nice man, and he'd come along with his electricity bill, which was overdue, and he wanted us to ring Western Power and, you know, arrange for him to pay it off or whatever. And Graham was the CEO at the time, so I went and spoke to him and I said, I think it was nearly Christmas, it was just on Christmas. I said, it's only about $80 or something, it wasn't anything. I said, why don't we pay it? Oh yes, that was a good idea. Well, that man was, his face, I can still see his face when I said, well, we'll pay that for you. Oh, he said, oh, we can have something for Christmas. And, you know, and it's always stuck in my mind that it was just a small thing on our part, really. You know, it wasn't a huge amount of money, but he was very anxious not to get into debt. And you know, sometimes you can help people. It doesn't take a lot.
That's right.
Yeah. And another lady we paid for her to do a first aid course, and a few weeks later we had a letter from her, and she'd got a job, and she got the job because she had his first aid certificate. And she was so delighted and thrilled. So those sort of things you remember, not as being earth-shattering, but
changing someone's life.
So important for, you know, one person.
Yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? It's the changing of people's lives and the impact that we have. And you know, we've got this mission statement that says about empowering people and enriching lives. And one question I do have for you, Helen, is around this notion of empowering people and what that meant for Southcare.
Well, it does sometimes just puts them in a better position to cope with what they've got facing them. And the financial counselling is so important for that. I just, you know, can't believe the government stopped that.
Yeah, well, I don't think they'll try it again, but who knows?
Yeah, no.
Coming back to the values, Helen, in the Constitution it said that the Southcare values would be modelled on Christian values, and of course we've moved not away from that, but we've more formalised what those particular values are. How important was that back then to set those values up for the organisation?
Well, I think it was, and when it started, it was heavily church involved.
Yeah.
People like to keep saying we belong to the Uniting Church because we were using that building, but that wasn't right, and we went to a lot of trouble to nip that in the bud because it was all the churches in the area, and some of them are still involved. But you know, when we got our first lot of committee members, it was very often it was just who within the church was prepared to go to another meeting, you know.
Yeah.
So you weren't, but that changed over the years. And we had some great committee members because it was a committee for a while.
Who sticks in your mind?
Who sticks in my mind? I can't think of his name. He was from the local Anglican church. He came for years. He was on the committee and really put in, you know, if there was work to do or whatever. But of course I can't think of his name now.
That's all right.
It's up there somewhere.
Yeah, up there somewhere. We could refer to the Precious Blue Book. The Precious Blue Book, which says Southcare 1982 to 1989, the story of a community that cared.
Yeah.
Your name, of course, is in this book, Helen.
That's
and let me just see if I can find out who were the people that were.
That was the picture of Audrey and.
That's Audrey
and Wes Hartley.
That's right, Wes Hartley and Audrey on the site of Southcare. Yeah. Yeah.
The day it opened.
The day it opened. Yeah, very important.
See, that's the building.
Yeah.
The building's still there, basically.
Still there. Still there. So yeah, I can find the list. Okay, well this is the list of the new volunteers. So yes, gosh, there are a lot of volunteers,
that was New Horizons, yeah.
Wow, huge number. And then that's the volunteers in the food centre. I know it's written in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So, so the first chair was Mr. Andrew Turnell. Yeah.
I've tracked him down a couple of times over the years. He's still around the area.
And then the next chair was Dr. Hayden Williams.
Yeah.
Then
he'd retired as the head cookie at Wait.
Oh yes, because Wait's an important part of our history, because I think they were on the committee, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
So Wait, of course, is now Curtin University. Yeah. Reverend Ian Svensson.
He was the Uniting Church minister.
Right. And then Gordon McIntosh.
For many years.
Yes. Well, in the book, of course, the book only goes up to 1989, and so this says March 1988. So I think he went through until.
That's Malachi Nugent.
That's Malachi.
Malachi.
There you go, Mal Nugent, coordinator of New Horizons program. How fantastic! And of course, the secretary is you.
It's me.
Mrs. Helen Moore, and it says April 1982.
To eternity.
To eternity, and I think it was 2014, wasn't it?
Yes, that's
you hung
right.
on.
I was waiting to get that bloody.
You wanted to go, and I said, "Don't leave me with the Constitution. Help me finish it." Remember, I begged you. I said, "Remember, I called you."
Yes, I remember.
Oh, Helen, are you going to please stay? We've got to get this through. I need your help and expertise.
Dear me, we read that a few times.
We did. I think you and I with you. Oh, and Les. Les was always good. Les Ozdalay was always very good at making sure he read every word.
Is he still on the board?
Still on the board, yeah.
Oh, he's good value to Les.
Yeah, he's very good value. So so there's a fair bit of history in this little blue book, isn't there? This precious blue book.
It was it's great that Audrey wrote it and wrote it then while it was still fresh.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Our many, you and I have had many conversations over the years, but I really do appreciate that you've told us a little bit more about the history of Southcare that's not in the blue book.
It's not in the blue book.
No, it's in you, Helen.
You'll have fun doing it with Audrey.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. Oh, isn't it amazing? It's amazing what a group of determined people can do.
That's right.
Isn't
that's
it?
right.
You know?
Because when we started off, I think the South Perth Council gave us $500 to help with our setting up cost, and we bought a lounge suite so that there was somewhere for the clients to sit.
Yeah, of course.
And the Uniting Church Investment Fund gave us something to start with, and then they did fund us for 3 years. The first year we got 30,000, and the second year we got 15, and the third year 10,000.
So that was a lot of money back then, wasn't it?
And that's when we employed Robert Watson on the 30,000. And the theory was that by that time we would have found other people willing to fund us. Well, that was never as easy as it sounded.
No, and it's still a challenge today.
But that was our first real funding from the Uniting Church Investment Fund.
Wow.
And so we lived hand to mouth a fair bit of the time.
Yeah. Well, certainly over the years we've we've been able to put some money away, haven't we?
Oh yes, thank Gordon Chong for that.
Yeah, and also to purchase the land, which was a big step
When
forward.
Gordon came to the organisation, we had no money at all.
Yeah,
We got spent as fast as it came in.
yeah.
The theory being, if it was government money, you had to spend it before the end of the financial
Oh
year.
yes, yeah,
A lot of money got wasted because we didn't know any better.
yeah.
And Gordon sorted that out, and he was terrific at salting it away.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, he did. He salted it away and he enabled us to then purchase the land that our buildings are
It's
on.
amazing.
Yeah. And of course now we've purchased the whole cul-de-sac.
Southcare Street.
Exactly. Southcare Central. Isn't it? That's what we jokingly call it. And of course we've got, great plans to do accessible housing for seniors.
Yes.